All right. Well, welcome to Widen You Gaze Fridays. I am so happy that you're here today. I have this is a brand new presentation. I'm really excited about the content and being able to share it with you. I worked on it late last night and the bulk of it. So it's still, I always find that when I do my second presentation, it's always a bit better just because I've kind of fleshed out some of the ideas, but I'm really looking forward to what I'm going to share with you today. My name is Luc Bouchard. I actually own a video production company that's called Barebones Communications. And in addition to having a video production company, I also am an executive coach. And where the overlap between the two of those are, and I'm just going to mute people here because I'm still hearing some stuff coming through. Okay, if you just get you to unmute your microphone if you want to talk. So as I was saying is that whether or not I am positioning people as experts on video or I'm positioning them as experts in an interview or in my executive coaching, it's still the same thing. I still basically help people with their messaging. So I consider myself to be a message crafter. And the message crafter is really about how do you position yourself the best to be in the marketplace so that they're going to identify with you and see that, yeah, I want your services on that. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about my background. I know some of you have heard this, some of you have heard it quite a bit, but I just want to show for the new people in the audience of what I bring to the table and where what I've accomplished. And the first thing I want to mention is that I have as a videographer and a video producer, of course, I have a YouTube channel. And the one where I really saw the power of video was 7 years ago when I produced this video. And that's when I was being as a life skills coach. That's what I was hanging my hat on. But I have this video that to this day gets 17 to 19 hits a day and I'm at 44,000 views. If there's anything that's viral for me, it's that, which it isn't. But it's been going. It's going and going. And I have obtained clients from this video alone from Geneva, Portugal, Jersey, New Jersey, Texas, and North Carolina. People saw this video and they want to talk to me and they hired me from this. So I often get a lot of comments on this. And what's interesting is this video was made for men, but 55% of the viewers are women. So anyway, on that. So I also have a course on Udemy. And if you're not familiar with Udemy, it's an online marketplace where you can put content on there. And Udemy's platform is it's free to put videos on. It's free to put content on a course, but they take 50% of whatever you charge for it. So my course on Udemy is producing high performance video content, the GPS to loyal audiences, 4 essential mechanisms. And this is the background. And in that, last time I checked, I had over 10,000 students with an average rating of 4.77 out of 5. So I'm bringing today the lens not only as executive coach, but also as to how to be on video. And something I do with my clients on a regular basis is actually get them to calm down so they can speak well on camera and actually represent themselves well. And there's a lot of tricks you can do that with, but this is some of the things I'm going to be bringing to you today as to how to actually show up well for the interview. And so quite frankly, you don't shoot yourself in the foot. There are 2 parts to this webinar today. I'm going to be talking about the technical aspects, and it's really do's and don'ts around that. And that's the bulk of it. But I'm also at the end going to go into the mental aspects of it. And I just want to point out a few things that people generally don't know about and what trips them up when they speak to glass, metal, and plastic.
Hey, look,
Yeah.
Quick feedback. You are in the review mode for the slide deck instead of presenter mode.
Oh, that's what's going on. Okay, thank you very much for letting me know that. So stop sharing. And I'm on the wrong screen. Hey, Laura, nice to see you. There we go. Thank you for whoever told me that. Appreciate that when I have that background. I see more people are joining still, so that's really cool. And let's continue. For the technical aspect of it, it's going to be, the do's and don'ts and your hardware considerations. Now, and for the mental aspects, it's, once my mouse works, it's really about some of the common problems, the root problems that people run into when speaking on camera. Okay, why am I back to this point? Oh, I'm not. Okay. So the other thing I want to say is of course, I researched this just to make sure what other people are saying, and there's no shortage of information out there. And I've taken a hodgepodge and put it together with my own particular lens on it, not intended. And it's really about what I bring to the table. There's a lot of information out there on how to shoot video, how to do video interviews. And I would take some of it with a grain of sand because there's some suggestions out there that I'm going, I don't know if I quite agree with that. And I'll explain those when I come across those. So the thing that I have learned, and that is when it comes to videos and interviews, is that there's two types of interviews out there, video interviews out there. And there's the obvious one, live interviews, which I think most people are expecting, but there's also taped interviews that are going on. And I've actually helped a client, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago with a taped interview, but it was an audition. He had, he was an actor, he was actually a lawyer, and he was an actor, and he had to send in a video interview, a video audition. So where I shot that and he had script, he had to do that. But the taped auditions, I think, or taped interviews are something that's coming out, probably going to be seeing more, but I'm not certain if that's a trend. So let's just talk about for the live interviews and just some overview on this. So a live interview, the more you know the technology, the more of an advantage you'll have. If you're not savvy with technology, if technology confuses you and you are having to use technology, then you have a lot of homework to do if you want the job. Because we're in a world now where the terrain has changed so much that what once was never really considered is now the norm and whatnot. I was like, this is how weird we're in this world we're in. I was invited over to a friend's to hang out in his backyard, and when I had to go to the bathroom, he told me to pee in the corner by his fence. Like, you know, last year at the time that wouldn't have happened, but his wife didn't want me in the house because of COVID. So we live in a very different world, and video can make you look smart, shiny, and competent. We could also make you look untrustworthy, dumb, and lazy. So there's that balance that you have to have, and you can do things. And these 11 suggestions I'm going to make in this webinar can give you the things that can help you with that. So let's talk about some taped interviews. What you do on a taped interview, as I understand them, is you're responding to prompts, either written or in an application, and they are becoming the norm. And really, it's for the recruiters and the hiring leaders to evaluate you at your leisure. So it's something that you might come across, and all the things we're going to talk about in the rest of this webinar is actually going to be applied to taped interviews. So let's jump into the technical considerations. And these are do's and don'ts and hardware considerations. So the first one, position a camera at the same height as the top of your head. So basically, this is one of the questions. I put this first because this is what people are asking. Where does the camera go? What's the angle of the camera? And you want the camera to be a bit higher. Actually, let me stop sharing here. You want the camera to be a bit higher so that you're looking up to it. And what it is that basically it's causing you to come up. So if you're worried about, you know, potentially like I have a double chin or that kind of stuff, you don't want the camera, and it's pretty hard to do because webcams are usually at the top of laptops or they're never down here. But what you don't want is anyone looking up your nose. Like you just don't want that. You want them to be coming down. And when you look at the camera, you're looking up, and it helps with your posture. Okay. The other thing I'm going to offer, and I generally don't do this, but because I don't have a sheet to hand out to people, I will actually give people the slide deck. And if you email for me, I'll put it in a PDF and you can have it that way, but you have to ask for it. I'm not offering it as a matter of course. Okay, so you want to look up. You want the camera to be slightly up and that you're looking up at it. That's the first point. And as much as you want to be able to look directly into the camera. And this is a bit of a disconnect for people because what ends up happening is it's not normal. You want to look at the people that you're talking to, but generally they're not seeing you there. if you want to look at them, you actually have to look at the camera and not down at where their screens are. So this is a bit of a disconnect for people. And I would suggest that what's more important than basically making sure where you look is do what's comfortable until you become more acclimatized to being actually having more acclimatized to talking directly to the camera. And it's really about it's about creating it's about engendering trust with the people that are hiring you. It's about them basically feeling like they feel comfortable with you. And that's why looking at the camera is so important, because you're making that eye contact. And it's about those connections that you want. But if that is too disconcerting and you just can't do that, then look at the screen so that you're more authentic and you're more real is what I advise on that. Okay, so the next point is probably a no-brainer. Is you want to basically, you want to minimize your movement and not wave your hands around. And I'm probably really bad for this and whatnot. And again, it's a fine line. What we're doing is we're walking a real fine line between being too wooden and too all animated and too all over the place. So it's, you want it to be normal, you want to have that, but you don't want it to be a distraction. So just be mindful of it. But again, if you are so focused on your posture where you're looking, you're not going to answer the questions. So this is why what you can hear from me at the very end is practice, practice, and practice some more. That's the reason for that. So that basically you can multitask. We only have so much capacity to do things. And if we are taking up part of our capacity to constantly monitor our affect, how we're coming across, then that may take away from the answers on your interview. And it's no different than being a live interview where you're with people, but you want to be as authentic and real, but you also don't want to have distractions. The fourth point is going to be about watching your posture. So how you can do that is you want to have good posture, you want to have a chair. You certainly do not want to be doing this, that kind of stuff. It doesn't look good. You want to have your chair erect where you're sitting up and you're leaning forward. Leaning back is not good. You want to look like you're paying attention. You want to look like you're engaging. You want to look like you're present. So watch your posture and kind of, right? And something that'll help that if you have arms on your chairs, that will kind of help your posture, but it has to be natural for you. Okay. Let's move on to the fifth. Are there any questions so far? Let me just ask that before we continue. We're good? Okay.
One question. Does this apply same like if you have a standing desk and like I usually have a standing desk, and when I have a standing desk, usually the computer is slightly lower than my head because it's not up, it's slightly down, but it's not that when you are facing the camera is looking at my nose. It's just I have to tilt the screen a little upwards.
Right.
That way I'm just maintaining an eye contact with the camera, but it's still not as at the same height as it should be.
Yeah, my initial thought with that is that you don't want to be looking down at people. Like you don't want people to look up at you just because that's kind of like you're wanting to have peers and whatnot. And you make an excellent point about a standing desk. And when we sit, all our energy pools. When you stand, you have more energy. You have to be on your feet. You're kind of moving and you actually present better. And when I was first doing these, like we're talking back at the beginning of March, I was actually standing through some of my presentation because it took me a while to get to be able to develop the actual energy I needed to show up fully for 90 minutes. And so I had a coach tell me that you might want to stand on that. So if you can stand during your interview, and it's going to keep your energy up, I think that's good. But when it comes to your camera, you want it to be kind of on the same level on that. And looking up at it is also, it causes you to have that posture better.
Right.
Did I answer the question? Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, no other questions? Okay.
Hi, Luke. I put one in the chat.
Okay, I'm not good at multitasking, so thank you for doing that. I'll just have you, unless Laura, would you monitor the chat for me?
I
Would you
can read
Okay.
it. I thought it might be
Okay.
easy for you, but I'll read it. So what about positioning a camera at a distance? In other words, not using the camera that's built into a laptop, but plugging in an external camera and placing it, you know, reasonably far away, kind of like what you have. Or yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so actually I'm going to answer that question coming up right away. And so I will address that. So that's a good
Right.
question.
And I have another one. What about positioning it slightly at an angle? I've seen a number of people doing that, and it actually does look good. So what are your thoughts on that?
I'd have to see an example of that because I'm not sure. Let's revisit that after also if I have to if I don't answer those questions, because I'm thinking about that because it might be counterintuitive for some of the stuff I'm going to talk about. But Laura, would you be comfortable monitoring the chat for me? Can I throw? Can't hear you.
Sorry, I'm working off of two screens and
Okay.
getting my mouse over to the unmute I'll monitor it. I guess I'm kind of like other people. I would be remiss in interrupting you. So if there are questions and you say, are there any questions? I'm more than happy.
That would be perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm actually going to investigate the camera angle, putting it at an angle, because I'd like to see what that kind of looks like.
Yeah, and I really want to see a visual of that because it's so much of the visual aspect of it that we have to be paying attention for. Yeah. So okay.
Well, a lot of news anchors do that at times. If you watch the news in the morning, you may notice that sometimes they look straight, like at a 90 degree angle.
We're talking about that. Okay.
Yes.
That is two cameras going on. And what they have is that I use that technique in my videos all the time. And when you have those two different angles, what it is, it's more engaging because, and if it's done properly and strategically, what it is that you really hit home a message when you want to highlight a point, you change your camera angle on the angle and it really accentuates it. So you have your main camera and then you have your second camera on that. So I don't know how you would do that with particularly your in an interview on you'd have that, but let's revisit that and see what we come up with here for the rest of this, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I love the participation. It really makes my job a lot easier. Okay, so the next one is about what colors to wear and whatnot. And it is advised that you wear solid colors and stay away from white. And the white is really about, it's the glare that might happen. So it might wash out, or it might actually cause your webcam on the aperture when it's trying to figure out what, jeepers, I'm losing my words here. The density, basically how much to fill in. So it might give a false reading if it's reading off your white, and it might make your face dark. And it's the same reason why if you have a window here and they're usually dark, a window with light coming through, of course, they're usually darker in their face because it's your webcam trying to figure out what to read for the light saturation, quite frankly. So white, that's an issue with white, and you just have to test this out. You also want to stay away from patterns, especially if they blend. And I don't know if you've ever seen anyone that has patterns on the shirt, and as they move, it kind of changes, it kind of shimmers, because and I'm not sure why it goes on, but basically they blend together. So you get this funky pattern going down here, and you just don't want that to happen. I don't know if it happens in all patterns. I don't know if striped is worse than the others. I haven't looked into that, but solid colors is better. And of course you want to wear, your professional wear, right, on that for your interview. So something I'm breaking the rule right now is reading off my screen because I have notes over here, but you don't want to read off your computer screen. And what that means is that you don't want to use it as a prompt for your memory. It's like you're worried about forgetting something. And so you have a whole bunch of answers worked out on that, and you're reading that on that. If you're going to do that, they should be one or two words that immediately bring you back as an anchor. And there's nothing with looking at your screen. There's not a problem with looking at your screen, but there is an issue if you're constantly reading on that, because you're not getting your full attention on them. So you want to avoid reading off your screen. If you're going to do it, just as words that you're going to remember. So there's one like the STAR report when it comes for interviews, and I don't recall what STAR means right now, but you might have the words just different broken down. S stands for, I forget, I'm drawing a blank on this. So don't read off your screen. Okay, this is the next thing actually I really want to talk about, and it is utilizing your background smartly. And for some of you that have been to my webinars, I always like to give a perspective or the bigger picture. And this is the perspective I'd like you to adopt with your background. A video interview is very much like inviting someone into your house, but they're only going to see a very small part of a room, primarily what's behind you. So the question is, what do you want that space to say about you? What kind of impression do you want to leave them with? All they know about you is what you say in the interview, how you dress, and what you show them behind you. And I would suggest that having nothing on the walls is a wasted opportunity for you to demonstrate your values and your character. And the interview is about your character. It's about who is this person? What is this known entity? Who am I talking to? And my background is extremely strategic. There was nothing about it that was accidental except for the piano, because it had to be there. It lives nowhere else in the house. I've had a lot of people say to me, do you play piano? They've made an impression upon it. And the only problem with this setup is the glare coming from the window out there. And I have the blinds down, and sometimes I will, sit over here if it's really too much, because, I'm bright enough as it is. I don't need any help. Just kidding. And so your background is filling in a story, and your interview, everything about your interview is strategic to align yourself with the company. So you demonstrate you're a good fit. I'm working with a client right now in Texas. We had a meeting this morning, and he's going to be doing LinkedIn messages. He feels very compelled to talk about the census, the US Census, and what's going on and the importance of it. He's from, like I said, he's from Texas. And we spent quite a bit of time about what the image that's going to be behind him. And the image that we picked is actually the first Black baseball player. I'm in Canada. We're about hockey, and I forget, Jackie, you guys know probably better than me. But it was a picture. He had another one of Martin Luther, Dr. King, but it wasn't big enough. And so the background gives people information. And there's a lot of people out there that say you should have nothing on the background. And I'm going, I don't know why. And these are some of the reasons for that. Let me just, the average person you do not continuously stare at who you're talking to. You do not hold eye gaze. You don't make constant eye gaze. You're always looking around. And quite frankly, if you hold someone's stare for too long, it's uncomfortable. And it's uncomfortable for you, and it's uncomfortable for them. Just think about how often, when you're having a conversation with someone, how often you will actually look at them in the eyes. And interviews are no different, especially if you have a panel interview and you're looking at 4 or 5 people. Like if there's 2 or 3 people on the screen and they're all coming in on that, you're kind of looking, and they're going to be looking at you. So when people are not looking at your eyes, they're looking at your mouth, they're looking at your body language. And I would suggest give them something else to look at that represents your values, beliefs, and principles. And this is the way I really want you to see your background. It's your handshake. It leaves a lasting impression. What impression do you want to make? And the thought I also want to share is that when it comes to first impressions, people show up and they see what's around you on that leaves an impression. And it needs to be an impression of who you are. If you're not being strategic with your background, you're losing an opportunity. It's really that simple. Any questions, Laura?
Luke, I have a question.
Yeah.
I posted it.
Sorry, one from Sachin.
Okay.
Do you have a good source of backgrounds to pick for different personalities? website or something else. I don't have the space available to represent what I would really like the background to be. And just to that point, I would almost concur with that. It's really difficult to set up a background somewhere on a wall without damaging the wall. You know, are there perhaps stands or putting a table with, you know, those boards behind it? I don't.
Yeah. I'm actually going to cover that as a point on backgrounds for this and whatnot. So yeah, just let me, we'll get to that. And if I don't address it correctly, please bring it. Thank you for the question on that. And thank you, Laura, for putting me on, letting me put you on the spot again.
That's okay. And just also, someone wanted to know about the Google Zoom background. So I'm
addressing that. Yeah. Okay. Okay. We are at, we're half an hour in. I don't know if I have a full 90 minutes for you today, but if we have conversations, we might. So let me just continue to talk some more about the background on this. So your background needs to hold the fine line between interesting and not distracting. And it's kind of there. And I really suggest it has to be a very intentional for the interview space. Now, the other thing I want to say about my background is that if you came into my living room and saw, let me just move this there so you could see those on that. On that wall, those are actually not placed well. If you look at them from here, they're actually, they would be spread out and be more. So what your keep saying that, what your background is may not actually look good in your space. Just to put this on your radar, just for you to know that those images, if I would put them separately, the dinosaur and the Haida art, the indigenous art, those would be, they would look very different. But because I want to show them, and everything here has meaning to me, everything here has, I'm pointing to something in these, metaphorically, all this stuff on that. And it's meant to engage people. It's meant to go fill in, who is this person? What are they about? So there may be a difference as to what it looks like in your room and what it actually looks like on the camera. And just know there's could be a discrepancy with that. Okay, so this is to your question about screens or backdrops as an option. Some of you that might have been here last week, I had my speaker, Andre, and Andre actually has this as a background. And what he has is it's extremely realistic. People say to him all the time, where are you at? They have a brick wall. Do you have a brick wall in your room? It's actually fabric, and it comes with a stand. This image, he said was 65. I think he said $65. He got on, Amazon or something on that, and the stand was actually more expensive. The stand was like, I don't know, $75 or whatnot. So he's looking at 150 all in. I'm assuming that's American. I'm not sure for Canadians in the audience, which I might be the only one. So there is that as a background. But the other thing you have to be cognizant of when it comes to your webcam, and something you might want to consider, is how much you're going to show. Because there is, and so I'm much more filled in, but I'm on a wide angle, so it shows a lot. And even if I move this back, I'm still showing quite a bit. So that I know in my Logitech, the one I'm using right now, you can actually set it if it's going to be widescreen or if it's going to be, 3x4. So it's going to be much more narrow on that. And then there's realities that come with that. So whatever your screen is, and when I was considering putting when we went into lockdown and I was going to do this, what is my background going to be? Because it didn't look like this. It looked a lot worse. And I actually thought of having a screen, but because of my lens, it would need to be massive. It would probably need to be 10 feet wide and 6 to 8 feet high if you're going to have it. So for Andre, and in his, his screen is actually really close behind him. He can reach around and he can touch it. So the closer you, but that brings up other issues, which I'm going to touch on momentarily on that. So depending on how much your webcam will fill in the frame, that will dictate how big your actual screen needs to be. I hope no one, I'm going to show you an image of something else altogether that I wasn't planning on talking about it. And I hope people don't have a problem with skeletons, because there's going to be a skeleton, because I am bare bones communications. So I'm going to just show you an example of what I mean about the camera angle. So I'll just get this, all the stuff taken off the page. Okay, so let me share differently. So this is, I have a video production company. I actually have a green screen in my basement, because I'm a home-based business. And so here is actually my actual basement on that. And so this screen here, as big as it looks, if I wanted to interview 2 people, I actually barely have enough room on this screen. And the reason for that, just not that it matters for the video interviews, is that if you're too close to the green screen, then what you get is called green screen bleed, and you get a green halo. And that kind of works on the skeleton, but it doesn't work on me. So your video, you have to be far enough away, and then your camera has to be back farther away. And honestly, with 2 people that are not, when I'm interviewing somebody or I'm doing a 2-person video, we have to sit fairly close so that the camera will get all of it. So just know that how much your webcam is actually picking up will have an indication as to how big you're going to have a screen as a background or as a backdrop on that. Is there any questions about that, Laura? Does anyone else have questions?
So,
well, I guess a bigger question is, what do you suggest to have as a background or as a virtual background? Because as I noted, like personally, I prefer the background that Sachin has in the back, which doesn't have bricks or anything like that, plain and simple. But yeah, what do you generally suggest for an interviewer?
Well, you're gonna have to actually, it's going to be a consideration of where your space is, where you're going to actually be able to do this. And what I'm giving you here is the optimum, and the minimum is that you don't want your background to cause you to lose ground with the interviewers. These are not your friends. These are not people that are going to be forgiving. These are not people you're having conversations with, networking with. This is a formal structure. And if your background is hurting you, that's not helping. And so as best you can. And I would actually like to do some problem solving with you at the end of that. So let me just go through the rest of this, and then I will answer that question more, if that's okay with you. Yeah. Joseph?
Yes. Oh, no. Yefim. Yes, of course.
Yefim.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to talk a bit more about some of the issues with actual backgrounds and whatnot, and we'll get to that in a second.
Oh, sorry, so, Luke. Yeah. Did you address the Google Zoom backgrounds?
I'm going to do it right now.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Laura. Okay. Virtual green screens and backgrounds. So here's a typical example of, someone without one, someone with one. And my contention with virtual backgrounds is they have a long way to go where it's not going to make you look bad. I was talking to someone, his virtual background was actually, he was from Vancouver, so he had Vancouver Harbor. And it was a very cool image, but the problem was, a mask kept showing up through the middle of his forehead. Like he would move and I would see a mask, like it would be a stick going through his forehead. And it was just like, that is so flippin' distracting. That is just not, and I'm having a problem with that. Other virtual backgrounds, what you see is when people move, that they tend to do, it shifts and it melds into your clothes and doesn't meld into your clothes. I have seen very few that really nail it, because it's the technologies I don't think is there. And I would highly recommend that you test it and you test it and you test it under all conditions and get feedback from people before you use a virtual background. Because if it is going to distract or be not solid, you're not helping yourself. I would rather see a messy bedroom than something that's going to do that, because you're obviously, I don't know how to say this differently, you obviously feel the need to hide your background. So then what are you suggesting by having a background that's not there? That's worse than what people are going to see. And quite frankly, I would rather see Vicky's background than a virtual background. I think, some stuff, Vicky, I don't mind. I never asked you for permission to point you out on this, but, I think an image over your left shoulder, I think you're in a corner there, so that might not work, but, something that really represents who you are and what you're about and your values on that. You want people to like you. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that. And unless you nail it, don't do it. And you don't want to be the one going, what the hell is that guy with that guy's background? Also, this is actually, I just thought of this now. If you're accepting a position and you're working from home and you're representing the company, what is your background saying about the company? Now you are the face of that company. And I would be thinking, if I'm hiring someone who's going to be working from a home-based business, and they have to deal with customers, they have to deal with clients, they have to deal with my boss, that would not be good on that. So there's more to consider than just the interview on this, and I just thought of that now. Okay. What's my next point? Okay, yeah.
Oh, sorry, there was another question here.
Hit me.
What do you think if it's just a blank color screen? So for example, both Vicky and I really have kind of plain wall systems. I have a photograph, but you can't really, you can't see my poster.
It's better than nothing.
Yeah, it is. It's better than nothing. But what do you think about something that's just a plain blank color screen? And one of the things that I know that I do, or I have done in the past, is I've gone to Staples and have them enlarged a picture that I can just pin to the wall and just have it draped down. Yeah. I kind of really like the fabric idea. That was really interesting. But yeah, Staples can enlarge and create posters, but it is at a cost. So it's a bit costly to do something like that.
It is. And I don't want anyone to spend money, especially in this day, on that. And especially if it's just going to be for a one-off, like I'm just doing it for that one. I don't know if that's where we live in anymore, because this is more our reality. A client of mine, who actually also met with today, a different client, has behind her logo, her banner, and her company name that is behind her. And the two problems with that is it's in front of there's light from the window that actually doesn't help it. It actually kind of washes it out, and it's not hung tight. It's not, so it has these wrinkles in it. And I said, I really would suggest that you would have that kind of pulled out and do some more on that. And so, and then she had issues with putting holes in walls, that kind of stuff, right? So yeah, there's things that you can do. It's always about, is it an upgrade from what existing you have? And again, if you're not clear, ask for people that will give you the straight goods. Not people that are just going to be critical for the sake of being critical, because that's what people do when you ask feedback. They think they're not helping you if they don't trash whatever they see. It's just like, what kind of impression does it make on you? What does this say about me? And if you can kind of suspend that. So if it's an upgrade, do it. If it's a downgrade or distracting, don't do it. Other questions, Laura, or we're good? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so, images like this as backgrounds, obviously I enlarged this, it really blew it up, but this is, I don't know why, apparently this is news anchor, but even in this, it's just like, I'm more interested in his background right now. Of course, I'm not hearing him, but, we see a window half open. Oh, I don't have my laser pointer on. We have a window. It's just untidy. It's just not good. And of course, it'd be in better, sharper focus. But when in the past, when my daughter's come in and she's gone to open and she's let that open, I actually will close it during the webinar because I don't like it open on that. So you want to avoid this if you can. And even this would take very little to clean it up and make it look a bit better. And I don't know why he has to have this webcam there, but again, we're not aware of it. The other thing is there's a time and a place to show your quirky side. This is not one of them. I don't really think it's going to help you if you have, unless you're applying for to be on the set of Enterprise or you know working on a movie set. I think this is the set from Star Trek. I'm pretty sure it is, and you know it's kind of fine, but it's not. There's no place for it in an interview. It's showing actually what this guy is showing what his values are. Star Trek is very important to him that he went to the trouble to have this. So your background tells a lot. It's your handshake. It represents you. So just be mindful of that. I don't think I meant to move this far back. Okay, let's move on to the 8th point. And we are doing really good for time. And we are, 45 minutes left. So we'll definitely have time. Next point, this is also very important. Manage distractions. Just like it's an interview. You're asking for people's time to see if you're a good fit. You do not want your eyes to be doing this because you're looking at someone over here. You don't want things coming through the room. You don't want, if you can minimize dog barking, you certainly do not want to be eating. You do not want anything that's not, you wouldn't do in a natural interview. Show up fully and be present. And if there's distractions, they're not helping.
So,
all right. Yep.
Luke, would a profound quote be too distracting in the background? So as you indicated, depending on who's watching who in this case, so someone's interviewing and they see a profound quote in the background. Is that too distracting?
No, actually, I don't think, because what I actually tested this out when I was first doing this on my background, and I had people that were coming that were attending on a regular basis, and I swapped out the T-Rex for the globe there, and I moved them, and they didn't even notice it. After a while, our background is invisible. It's not there. And I think if the quote is a representation of your core values and your beliefs, and it's not going to be something that is, if you're an environmentalist, I don't know if you really want to be saying some sort of quote about the fact that all big business is evil. Like that's not helping you in that moment. It has to be in alignment for your values and the company you want to work for. So no, I don't. But if you can't read it, that's the other thing. You have to be able to read it if you want people to see it, right? So writing is on the wall is not bad, but if you're trying to have an impact, then you want people to be able to read that. All right, moving on. Okay, this one actually just came to me, and it is being cognizant of your off-camera image. So my image. So what we're actually talking about is, you can see Bare Bones Communications on your screen. I have that there because this is actually I need to see what you're seeing, and I want to, not that worked earlier, but that's why that's there. I used to have an image of myself, and then I thought, why am I not putting my branding in there? And so I changed it to that. And this is what you don't want. So the image of myself, image of my company, this is actually what you don't want. And this is actually, I actually saw this. This was their image for their, when they're not on camera. I would strongly suggest you put a good image of you in that, as opposed to what you'll see is the silhouettes on people. I don't know when that happens, doesn't happen, because I'm not seeing that now, but just literally a placeholder to show a person, like a head and shoulders on that. This tells lots. This is no different, actually, than having a voicemail that is not appropriate for a job search. And it's like somebody's their voicemail, you call them up, you want to invite them to an interview, or, you know, probably that's the first time you hear it. And there's something that is nothing to do with the interview. It's like being quirky, it's being weird, it's kind of strange, and it's your professional message. So if you don't have a good auditory greeting on your phone, get one with your name. It's very frustrating to call someone for an interview and you don't know if you're actually talking to the person that you've called. It doesn't help. It's happened more times beyond that. But the point, yeah, Michael?
I'm sorry, I wanted to piggyback on that with a funny story. I heard of a commercial driver. I was in a commercial driving school and the teacher was saying how he had a job for a student. So when he called the student and listened to the recording was blaming on the alcohol, and he promptly hung up the phone to not offer him the job.
Think you.
About it, a commercial driver with a song "Blame It on the Alcohol" as his voice recording.
So in the Freudian world, that means he didn't really want the job, right? On that. So yeah, it's an excellent point. You know, it's like, I think when the Kuwait War came out, I had a machine gun in my background on my answering machine because it was like, you know, we're all going to war and that kind of stuff, right? And it was just like, and I thought it was fun, but it wouldn't have been appropriate for an interview on that. So your image that you use should be you. It should be an image of you or of your branding, because why are you wasting that opportunity? I would rather have you guys see my actual logo and imprint my brand upon you than actually my face, because you're already seeing my face. Okay. Next point. Invest in current hardware if needed and if you're able to. So I'm going to actually talk about the 3 bits of hardware in this, and it's going to be start with your webcam and microphone and lights. And I'm just going to give you some background on this. So when it comes to your webcam, this is really about how much you fill the frame. And I often leave because I'm running 3 monitors, I will often leave my monitor back here. And I've had people say to me, you're too far away. So I try and remember to bring it in, because what you're looking for is you're looking to fill in. You don't want to be in someone's face. You don't want to be too close to them because that's uncomfortable. You don't want to fill it in too much. And, oh, 1 second. Okay, see you. My daughter, Sarah, the world Sarah. Anyway, so you want to own a lot of the space, but you don't want to be too far and you don't want to be too close. And so, Michael, with you, since I get to pick on you, what I would suggest about you is a bit more space on top of your head, but you're kind of like like that. You just lift the camera up a bit more on that. And that would be an example. I think, Laura, you're good, your frame. Cindy, you're good in the frame. Who else here? Vicky, I would have you just a bit more close. And I know you're an HR specialist, so you would never interview this way, right? Right on that. So yeah, so you want to fill up the majority of the frame, but you don't want other things. So let me show you what I mean by that. Oh, actually, I'll come up to that. There's a slide coming up showing that, and I'll be more specific. The other thing that I've recently come across this as an issue that I wasn't cognizant of is focusing issues and knowing where your focal point is. So I'm going to use my friend Andre, who spoke last week. And what Andre was doing was he was too close to the camera. And so here's the considerations. We have a background that's, if I was an Andre right now, the background would be right about here. The background is close enough where actually the webcam is trying to determine what to focus on. And if you notice in this image, these bricks are in pretty sharp focus. They're actually, you don't get much better than that with this kind of stuff. Like, you have some very defined lines here and whatnot. You tell us on that. But it's actually focusing on Andre more than it's focusing more on the wall more than it is on Andre. And the other thing that would happen, actually, I'll just show you this video right now. I just did a short, there's no sound to it, but I'll just show you it. So let me just get that and share my screen. Okay, and why is this not? Sorry, I'm just toggling between two screens here. Okay, there we go. So again, there's no sound. Just look what happens, and hopefully you'll be able to see it. I rendered this in like really low resolution, so it wouldn't take up room. That's why it's less sharp and it's more granulated, but just watch what happens. Do you see how the camera is struggling with being in focus? And it actually looks like the background's getting a bit closer and a bit further away. And when Andre would lean in forward, it's really struggling. Do you guys see how the wall's moving? It looks like it's moving. So let me just stop sharing here. Did that made the point I'm making? Okay, yeah. So what's happening there is the webcam is having a hard time discerning what subject matter it should focus on. And the default in this example is actually the background on that. And so, and I gave Andre this feedback, like I've told him all this. It's not something I didn't tell him. Keep moving this away. So because he was such full in the frame, like his hair was like even outside of the frame on that, and he would move. The webcam was trying to discern where the focus was on that. So we'd come in and out of focus, and it was a very simple fix. All I suggested to him is to just move back a bit, and if he could move his screen back a bit further. And I haven't seen Wade working on that. So the focal point where your webcam actually will focus on, you need to know that. And they're not all the same. And my client in Texas just bought one that actually is the manual focus. You can actually focus it yourself. I didn't know they came with that. Like it's like you could change the lens on it, or you move the lens is what I think it was on that. But it had a manual focus. Okay, what else do I want to say about this?
There is a question too.
Thank you.
Do you have any suggestions about the minimum number of megapixels or frames per second? And I'm assuming this has to do with the video.
Well, so you want high definition. There, I don't even know if you cannot get high definition and 1080p, and they're like 40, 50 bucks, even like here in Canada, right? They're not that expensive. And your frames per second is going to be, I don't even know if I can change the frame per seconds on my video camera. So if you have that as an option, you might actually, you might have to play with it and see. But no, I don't have a recommendation on that, because I think webcams are now becoming more complicated, and you might have that as an option, but I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, and I think from when I do videos, the frames per second or whatever, if I remember correctly, that's something I can adjust when I'm rendering the video.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a very different than what's going to go on that. And the thing is also, frames per second is actually how many images it's taking per second, and how it's doing that, right? And so there may be implications as to your bandwidth and whether the signals being sent out. Very often more is not more is less, or less is more on that. And I'll give you an example of that coming up right away. Other questions, Laura? Sorry, your mute was on. No, okay, I'm going to move on. Okay, thank you. This is the grace one of my common Edmontonians is giving me. So, okay, we are back on the big one. Yes. So I talked about level, same with your monitor, and okay, the same monitor as who you're being interviewed with. I don't think I have to mention this, but I'm going to, because I've seen people do it and they not be aware of it. When you have multiple screens, what will happen is your eye contact's here, but you might be looking over here. And you do not want that to happen. You do not want to have to have people, and they may understand that you're looking at a different monitor. You just do not want to do that. You want to look at the same monitor that the people are under your webcam. And you don't want it, you want your eyes tracking everywhere else. It's just not helping you on that. Okay. Talked about that. Grainy images. Depending on how old your webcam is, and if it came with your laptop, you might have to upgrade it because it just might be too grainy. It might not help you. And you want sharp, clear contrast. You want things to be on that. You don't want a grainy picture. We've seen grainy pictures, it just doesn't help. So just be cognizant of, if your pictures, if your webcam is actually serving you well on that. And webcameras are not expensive. Like you can get one for 50, 60 bucks, good quality. Okay, if you are buying a new webcam, and this actually happened to my client in Texas, do not assume that it's going to work perfectly. He bought a new, we went to go shoot a video on his webcam because he's not going to hire me. I wish he brought me to Texas, but we were doing it on there and he was not in focus. I actually even said to him, I says, is there a piece of plastic on your lens? Because you're not in focus. And no matter what we did, he was not in focus. And factory default, it was a no name. So, he bought a new one. He got a better one, but don't wait to the interview to think it's going to work is the point. You need to test the stuff up front. So those are my thoughts on webcams. I'm now going to go on to a microphone, and I'm going to give you a rule of thumb in the video industry. The further away the mic you are, the worse the sound is. And there's a reason why I use this, because I do not want my webcam microphone to be picking up the information, because it's going to pick up the whole room. It's going to pick up everything. If there's echoes in there, on that. So there are very good microphones. There are shotgun microphones that you can actually point. They use them on football fields where you can actually hear the quarterback talk because it has that screen on it. No one's going to invest in that. The further you are from the microphone, the worse your sound is, because it's now competing with all the other noise on that. So be aware of that. If you are going to purchase a microphone, I highly recommend one with a USB plug, not the minis, the little mini ones. Do I have one here? If you can see it, but not these small ones, because quite frankly, your information transmitted is not as the same density as over with USB. It's much smaller with a mini jack plugin. It's just better. And the consideration with the USB plugin is if you're running off Apple platform, you might have some interface issues on that. So if you're going to buy a microphone, get one with USB if you can. Now, further to buying a microphone.
Oh, sorry, Luke, I was just going to ask, I know that there's a plethora of USBs and there's a plethora of webcams. Do you have any brand names that you tend to choose over other brand names?
I've been really impressed with my Logitech my webcam. Excuse me as I do this, it says on the front of it, actually 1080p. And that's really pretty much the branding on it. So Logitech it's served me well. I can change the settings within it. It has a microphone on it. So that would be who I'd recommend. When it comes to microphones, it is possible to purchase too much microphone. So this is you see this a lot. This is Yeti Blue. For what you pay for it, it is outstanding. It is actually too much microphone for most of my uses, because what happens is I can't take this off. There's multiple microphones in this. So you have a setting on the front that, I don't know if you can even see that, there's any point. So one of these settings will tell you if you're speaking to it, if there's two people speaking. So they have a pickup here, they have a microphone here, they have a microphone here, and then they have an omnidirectional microphone. And so if my furnace kicked in and I was using the omnidirectional, it would probably be picked up on this microphone. There is too much is not good. You can buy too much microphone. So this, I think, was around 160. I thought it was great, recommended, and is actually, I only use it very specific times. The other things that I want to say about your microphone is that if it's of any kind of good quality, anything that happens on your desk will register on the microphone. That's why you see people have a microphone that's actually suspended on a separate stand away from the desk, because even doing this will be picked up by the microphone. didn't mean to advance like that. So your microphone, it's not something that has to be a huge investment. An ideal microphone is going to be a lapel or even a boom, but that some people might not like that. I have it because I spend a lot of time on this and I want to hear, and I don't want to have to worry about other noise on that. There's something else I was going to say about, yeah, so lapel is, what you need to know about a lapel, and it shouldn't be an issue. The mics that go here is that as long as you're looking forward, it works fine. If you do this, your voice, it's like this. You look forward, it's fine. Turn away because you're not having the mic on there on that. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing what I saw Vicky doing, and she had her, let me just see if I can see the image here. Vicky had her heads, if I remember correctly, you had your, yeah, you have that on. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. I can't even see it. I actually forget seeing it now I look at it. There's nothing wrong with being mic'd up to that, because the point is to hear and to be able to speak clearly on that, and people see past it. If you watch any videos of people that have actually, you can see the microphone, like what Vicky's wearing with a headset on that kind of stuff, you don't see it after a while. So it's perfectly fine. Okay, I'm going to move now on to lighting. And the thing I don't know if any of you attended when I was when I had my videographer come on and talk about shooting content and whatnot. And one of the things his name's Patrick, and when I interviewed him, because my other videographer was moving away, so I need to find a new one. And what I said to Patrick is, I said, you have your primary consideration of my videos is your sound, your second is the lighting, and third is the content. And I said to him, I will crucify you if you don't get the sound right. Because I do videos that are talking head videos, and a talking head video is anyone that's just basically speaking on camera where there's not a lot of other stuff going on. The message is being spoken right to the person on that. So your sound is absolutely your first consideration. Second is your lighting. And that is because your face cannot be in a shadow. People need to be able to see your eyes. This is about engendering trust, so they want to hire you. If they can't see your eyes, it's not going to help. So your lighting source is very important. So the first thing you have to be aware of is, where's your light coming from? And there's different sources. Is it coming from directly in front? Is it coming from behind? Is it on the side? And on the side is not a bad thing, as long as it doesn't look like you're on the dark side of the moon. Half your face is in shadow. It's like you might have a good, so you have your key light is what fills you full. And then you have your frame light, or I'm drawing a blank on it. You have your other light that actually fills in the other profiles on it. On a set, minimally three sources of lights. There's going to be the main light on that, another light, and then sometimes you would even have a third light to fill in the rest. That's going to be toned down, or you might even have light behind you to really fill out that shadow and whatnot. So where is your light coming from? The ambient light, the natural light, where is it coming from? And is it basically causing shadows on your face? And the other thing you have to consider is, if you wear glasses and they don't have anti-glare coating, you might want to consider wearing contacts or getting anti-glare on your glasses and whatnot. And this is a cost, of course, I don't want to run anyone have more costs on that. But again, if people can't see your eyes, you're not helping yourself. It absolutely amazes me when people have conversations with their sunglasses on, and like meaningful conversations, just like, what are you hiding, right, on that? So if you can't count on your light being consistent, consider buying lights, and you'll be amazed as to how much room could look different from a sunny day to a cloudy day. When I had my sound engineer that I sometimes use, he was from Spain, come on. We had done many many Zoom calls during the day. I would generally talk to him at 8 o'clock my time, 4 o'clock his time. Lots of light. And then when he presented for me in Widen Your Gaze on Podcast 101, his room looked like crap. It looked like his walls were dirty. And it was just like, I'm thinking, what the hell's the matter? It was yellow. And it was all because there was no natural light, and it made phenomenal difference on that. So if you're going to have a day that's might be cloudy and it fills in and it makes your room look dingy because it has that ability to do that, you might want to consider artificial lighting on that. And not just any kind of lighting, because white lights that you buy when you buy bulbs are not white, they're composite colors. Lights that you buy for actually videos are true white, so they're not adding additional color. And with my client in Texas, I recommended a set of lights for him that were like $50, and they were about this big, and all he needed is to fill in the shadow, because the way his room was, you couldn't see half of his face some of the time. And different times of the day would give different lights on that. So another perspective I want to give you on this is giving you the gears here, to give you the gear perspective. And that is, I recommend that you see your webcam, mics, and lights as important as a well-written well-written cover letter and resume, and your interview clothing. It is the things that you need to show up well with. And if you don't, you're shooting yourself in the foot. It's if you do not sound good, you do not look good, and you're not well lit, it's a problem. Okay. My 11th point in this is that do virtual dress rehearsals with your gear and with somebody who else is online. Find someone who you can talk to. I suggest even in the chat, put out there, see who wants to have a virtual interview buddy. Get people to help you with this, because we don't know what we don't know. We have our own blind sides. What we think is fine, other people can give us. With Russell and the brand new webcam being out of focus, it was just like, he didn't know that till I pointed it out to him. So never trust that your equipment will work, unless of course you don't want the job. So now I'm going to touch on some of the mental aspects of this. Laura, were there any, let me just take off the video here, as my mouse doesn't seem to want to cooperate. Is there any questions right now that we can see? No? Okay. Thumbs up that we're good? All right. Thank you. Okay. And the people I can't see, thumbs down? Just kidding. I can't see you. So, okay. Thank you. Excellent. Well, and actually, I'm going to give some tough love here. And I'm going to actually say that for those of you that don't have your video camera on, I'm not meant to, give you grief or whatnot or shame you, but you need to get used to being on camera. You need to, it's a muscle you have to develop. And if you want to show up well on video, where are you practicing that? Where are you actually developing those skills? The thing I say is that the thing I liken it to is when people go off into space, they lose bone density because they don't have that gravity. Well, if you're not showing yourself on your screen, you're losing those interaction skills and whatnot. So, consider that. Okay. I don't have a lot on the mental aspects of it because I really want to cover this, but there's a few things I want to cover and talk about while we have more time. So here's some of the common root problems or blocks that people have with speaking on camera. And the first one is the amount of how much we depend upon feedback in our conversations with people. As much as I want people to have their camera on for their own sake, it actually helps me quite a bit, because when I see people nodding their heads and agreeing with me or doing that, I know I'm actually having an impact. And part of the problem is that we don't know how much we depend upon feedback from people. It has been shown time and time again that when it comes to language and communication, it's only 7% of our communication, 7% of our communication. It's very little. We depend so much on body language, intonation, how people are actually, how you show up, how you talk, your body movements, all your gestures. That's where we get the language from. Quite frankly, that's why texting is so problematic, is because you have no context around everything else. And if you put something in capitals, people think you're yelling or whatnot, when you may not be. You just might be excited. So when we're on video, when we're going to shoot video, we don't have that feedback. We don't have that confirmation that people are actually following us, because when we're talking to people, if you get a blank look, if someone gives you a blank look when you're talking, we automatically adapt. We automatically change our messaging to see if they're going to do that. Or we'll ask, have I lost you? Are you understand where I'm coming from? We ask for that feedback if we're not getting it. And so when you get on camera, and I'm talking about when you're not seeing yourself on camera, but you're actually, when you're just talking on camera, we don't have that feedback loop. We don't have the knowledge that people are following us on that. And that's what throws us out. That's what throws us off. That's actually what causes us to pause, because like, am I making sense to people? And I have done sort of my presentations. I think this is my 78th or 79th time I've done a webinar since we all went into lockdown. And there's been times when I've been doing them where I have 3 or 4 people in the room, but they all have their video camera off. And it's like, and I'm thinking, thank God I know my content so well, because I don't know if it's landing on them. I have no idea if it's having an impact on them. So when it comes to shooting on camera, know that we depend a lot on our actual the feedback that we get from people. And if we're not getting that, then we kind of throws us off. So that's one of the biggest thing, is know that we depend upon feedback tremendously to know if we're on target with if our message is landing on people. Something else that people struggle with is actually seeing themselves on camera. They don't like that. And so what I recommend for people to do that is actually make sure that you're not on the screen. Now in Zoom, you can change your gallery view. You can change that around so it's not big and whatnot, or it's not that big. You're not full frame on that, right? You can minimize that on that. But some people just hate what they look like. And I did too when I started. I hated what I looked like. I was bald. I'm overweight. I had to get over myself, quite frankly, if I wanted to be on video. So if you don't like looking yourself on camera, then basically find a way so that that's not happening. But you can't put it on another screen, because then you might not be looking at the people on that. So just know that. We talked about the feedback loop, and I'm actually now want to take questions specifically on what do people have about the mental aspect of being on camera. Does anyone have anything that they want to ask? Or because the premise of this is that you are ready for the interview. You have done your work to be to get ready for the interview. This is not about your knowledge or representing, talking about your skill base. This is about on that. So any questions, Laura?
I have a question regarding like filling the frame. If I look at you on my computer, it looks like you're occupying about, I'd say 20%, no more than that. That's what you'd like to be?
No, that's
too little.
It's too little. It's too little. And I've had feedback on that. That would be more of what I want. It's just, I can't see my other screens and I depend upon them. So that's why I'm further, but this is not,
Sure. Could you give an example now what it should look like? Just like
I'm going to say, I like Michael. I like where Michael's at. He's actually,
let me find him.
Purple shirt.
So he's about,
devilishly handsome.
He's about 25%, I would say.
Yeah.
Actually, about as much as you.
Well, now because I pulled the whole thing. That's right on that. Yeah. So I'm not seeing anyone. I would say that some people are a bit further away than they should be. Oh, this is the other thing too. And I'm Cherie. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. You've got the.
It's Cherise, and I know I have a virtual background up, guys.
You do not really?
Yes.
I never. That
I know it's bleeding through, right? Like,
actually, no. I'm not. I wasn't going to say that. Actually, no. I'm quite surprised how good that looks. Now, part of the thing is, and this is the other thing I want to mention, is anytime you're shooting any kind of content on your smartphone, I really encourage you to not shoot it profile, but shoot it landscape. And the reason for that is you don't have to tell the world you're shooting it from, you're using a smartphone. The technology, the lenses and the auditory are so good that you don't have to tell people that. There's actually, there's some production companies that are shooting a lot of videos on this because they're looking for that other kind of look on that. So this tells you that it's on a phone. I don't know if it's like this. So that's just my one recommendation. But Did anyone know she had a virtual background? No. What are you using? I'm pleasantly surprised how good that looks. Can you just turn your camera? Can I ask you to turn your cell phone sideways just to see what it looks like? No, just move the whole thing. Oh wow, look at that. So can I just see what it is if you turn your now we're gonna play whack-a-mole. Are you with us?
This is the most hysterical thing. I will attach the link to let you guys know where I got the virtual backgrounds from. I have quite a few.
Okay. Well, it really, I was actually surprised on that. Now, you're not in the full frame, so maybe, but is it possible you could turn your cell phone sideways just to see how much that makes a difference? Oh, okay. Yeah, I like that. Okay, now it's a bit more pronounced. Now you see it a bit more on that. Yeah, and you're also not in the full frame, so I'm not sure why that's about, because everyone else takes it up. You have that on the side, so that might be just setting in your camera. But
yeah, I'm on my cell phone.
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah, so yeah, and I would just recommend that's better than doing the narrow on that.
This is the background I wish for.
Well, it's the background you deserve, so you should have that. So let's get you a job.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, let's get you a job so you can buy that house. So
yeah, let's do that.
I'm so glad I've been proven. I'm pleasantly surprised how well, but I can see it when you move and that kind of stuff. It does kind of have that bleed, but it's not as bad as some of the ones I've seen.
Yeah, when you were sharing that story, I was in tears. It's very funny. I'm like, well, that's probably what mine's look like I'm just bleeding through it. But since you said I'm not, and I'm just sitting very still, so maybe that has a lot to do with it.
That actually does have a lot to do with it, because because the software is trying to accommodate for that, because they don't want that to happen. But I believe next year at this time this probably won't be an issue. Like, this is going to be such a thing in demand that you can pick anything on that. But again, it can't be distracting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. Yeah, you see there we go with that. Is kind of out of there. Okay, what about the other mental aspects of the just showing up on video? Is there questions that people have? Yeah, please.
Hey, Luke, I have a couple comments and would love to hear your thoughts. Can you hear me okay?
You could talk just a bit louder, please.
Okay. I have bad hardware. This is a 8-year-old computer, so
okay.
I don't think anything's gonna help. One of the things that I noticed is just what sort of went through my head and how I presented myself when the video camera was on and video camera was off. If the video camera was on, I always felt that I had to be at the top of my game, and I had to be kind of presenting myself and speaking myself and doing everything right. I'm in the consulting world, so it's always perceptions. So that's everything. And so just something to note that mentally, when you turn your camera off, people don't see you, and your brain knows people don't see you, so you kind of tend to disconnect. Every team that I've been in where people had their videos off during meetings has turned out to be dysfunctional in some way. They just didn't work well.
Sorry, that resonates as to be a truth. Yes. Yeah.
And then even people, have all the video cameras on. I understand there's a lot of bandwidth issues. Everything slows down when everybody has their videos on. Yeah, there's a lag and all of that. But at least when you're speaking or when you're actively contributing, so I make an effort to always have my video on when I'm saying something or if I have a question. So that's just a couple of things that I noticed. I mean, I will turn my video off if it's really crappy. Like the connection goes bad, I have to turn it off.
Yeah, that's right. And sometimes we need the information is more important than having that on. And I think there's very legitimate reasons why people don't have their camera on, because I don't always have my camera on. And it's also, I don't want to be a distraction by getting up and leaving. And so but this is about a interview. So there's no, I see no reason at all for you to ever have your video camera off when you're in an interview. It just, why would you do that? Because then you're not present on that. And I agree that people tend to multitask if they don't have their camera on, because people can see what you're doing, right? On that. So be aware of that. So thank you very much. That's excellent input.
Could I ask a question, Luke? When you talk about a video interview, so I mean, when I do an interview through Zoom or whatever, for me, that's not a video interview. The types of video interviews that I've been on is where I'll be sent a link, and then I have to record my answers to the questions, and I don't get any feedback. It's just you've got 2 minutes or you've got 5 minutes and you need to record the information, and you can actually redo the if you're not satisfied with your response, just like if you're not satisfied with a voicemail that you left, you can do it again. So there's lots of opportunities to do do-overs. What would be your suggestions on that? Because those I find very time and labor intensive. And in all honesty, I actually won't do them anymore because of that.
Yeah, and part of the thing is they are shortcuts for the either headhunters or for the hiring leaders, so to look at their own leisure and whatnot. And I think that they are. It'll be interesting to see where the trend on them is, and it really comes down to how bad you want the job, and if that's a job you really want, and if that's something. I remember once there was a position I wanted, and my cover letter had to be handwritten, and it was just like, and I hate my handwriting. Like I really just like my handwriting, and it just took forever. And it's just like, is this going to get me? Like, are they going to study it? Like, why, in this day and age, whoever was the hiring leader decided that they want to study my handwriting, obviously. And it's like, how bad do they want the job? It's really that on that. I think that we are, the terrain, we have not, where we're going to be in a year is going to look very different from where we are as to norms and what is how business is being done. But I kid you not, I'm not embellishing this at all. I spent 40 hours on a 5-minute video that I never used. Right? It was a promotional video, and yeah, right? Okay, go ahead if you want to. Yep.
No, I was just.
Oh.
Go ahead, Laura.
No, you're up. She's yeah.
Okay, I'll go ahead. So Luke, just a follow-on question to that. 3 minutes left, so I'll keep it short. So you said you spent 40 minutes. Was it worth it? And then are people, I see a lot of fairly, I see gray hair and shaved head. So I see people who are very experienced, probably in hiring decisions. I'm curious to hear, is it worth it? And do you really want to work for a company like that has done this? And like, is this where we are going? What are you seeing?
Well, okay, so
that job.
Yeah. So first of all, was it worth it for me to do 40 hours for a video? Yes, absolutely, because it was practicing and honing my skill. It was learning how to speak better on camera. It was something that at the time I really seen to that. I needed to have that. Did I like the fact I didn't use the video? Not really, but I'm able to now shoot very quickly because of all the work I've done on it before. So it's muscle memory, it's what you're learning, it's what you're developing on that. It really comes down to how much are you prepared to jump through hoops of an interview? It's really the only question is, does the perceived value of the position worth the work you have to go through it? But it's no different than, you said you're a consultant?
Yeah, I'm a consulting manager.
Yeah, on that, right.
I mean, I'm kind of at a point where I think I'm not terrible at it. I don't think,
right.
I learned a lot.
No, but my point was, when you decide to become a consultant and have to go out and actually find your own clients, you had a tolerance for that a lot of people don't want to have because they don't want to do that, right? So you had to learn a whole bunch of different skills to actually get out there, as opposed to having one line of work coming from you from your employer. So looking for work is no different. It's like how bad you want to do that. And for some people, if they're not prepared to do the work because they don't think it's going to be any point to it, or they don't think they're going to get the job, they're not going to do it. So it really comes down to, it's not whether or not the practices that the company is using agree with you or resonate with you. It's how bad you want the job. Because I have, as a hiring leader, and I've hired more people than I can remember, I've gone through stacks of resume, and I'm looking for ways to streamline my process. And how do you figure that out? And when we're in an employer's market, as we are right now, you get to make higher demands upon people. When we're in a cycle where there's employment rate is really low, you adapt. I know that the Canadian military and the University of Alberta changes their standards as to enrollment or to join the military with how much people are out of work. If there's a lot of people out of work, then they raise their standards or for you to go into the military. If enrollment is low at the university, they drop their standards because they want the enrollment. So it's, how bad you want the job and the perceived value that the job is going to be worthwhile your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Question.
Yeah, Michael.
So let's say you're on the video interview and you have some bullet points or something that you already have laid out in response to either the questions or maybe there's some points that you just wanted to bring into the conversation. What are your thoughts about if you sound speech-like? Like, let's say you've rehearsed it, you actually know how to deliver it, and it sounds like a speech. I mean, is that just a matter of how the employer, is that a subjective thing where some employers will look at that unfavorably, or will they perhaps look at it as, wow, this person really thought ahead and prepared a package, a presentation to offer?
Presentations that you're demonstrating, that you're showing?
No, I'm talking about like a speech. So, like, for example, this morning I had an interview. Yep. And I had a number of points that were written out. And there were certain points where I was reading directly, and then other points where I went completely off script because I knew kind of what I wanted to say. But I varied between sounding like I was I'm just, kicking myself or thinking,
yep.
Hard on myself. Either I was speech-like because I was reading what I was reading, or I was off the cuff speaking free form like I'm doing now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is that something where that can work against me, where I sound too speech-like in some places? What are your thoughts?
Well, the term, the reframe I would do on that is how authentic and genuine are you coming across? And if you can have, and so my recommendation would be to have bullet points as a reminder, and I would actually even have them just say, I just have a few points. I'm just going to look at that and go on to my next point and that kind of stuff. Now that would be appropriate, or that would not be appropriate if you're in a position where they expect you to remember stuff, then you're not showing that. Like, it's what is appropriate for the position. And the other thing is the bullet points, what you're reading is meant to be a trigger so you remember it. When I produce content, when I work with my clients to do video, I don't write their speech. I don't write their talks. I won't, because then it's my words, and how can I write your message? But further to that, if the subject matter is there and the camera's here, I am actually behind the camera doing a couple things. I'm nodding my head. I'm doing a thumbs up. I'm doing this if I want them to smile. And I'm having them look at me on that. And what I will often do is hold up a piece of paper with a word on it, or flashcards, to be able to say that's it. So they cover that point, then I show up the next one. So they don't have to worry about remembering it all. So and I'm just going to challenge this idea that you've gone to the work and you prepared. Well, if you've really gone to the work and prepared, you won't need the memory. You won't need to read off the stuff on there. Does that? Yeah.
It was a mixture of both. It was a mixture of both.
Yeah.
Because there were a lot of points that I had to synthesize into like a continuum of thought.
Yeah, and just say there's a lot here, and it's that you're drawing upon it. There's something else I was going to say about your thoughts, synthesizing them. Rats. I lost it. It was and it was good. Okay, if it comes up, I'll bring it up. We are at what are we at here? We're at 2:34. We've still have 13 people on from the 18th, so thank you very much. I'm prepared to stay and answer questions any more that we have on that. So if you have more questions, please bring them on. And if you guys need to go, I understand that. And I'm just really bugging me. I'm forgetting what that point was, Michael, that I was going to make about you. Oh, I know what it was. I got it. Sorry for interrupting. I would ask, I would suggest that you trust yourself more that you're going to get the point you need to get across. And you know, you're very confident, you speak well, you know your stuff, and going into an element of trust, you know, there's anxiety that happens with that, but just trust you're going to get the message that you need to have. And what I will say to people when we're shooting video is, I want you to be authentic, not to cover all your bullet points, your checkpoints. You need to be authentic, and you need to be heartfelt and enthusiastic. That's what people pick up on. Listen to the information. So you know your stuff, and you know, unless it's important, you cover all those points, just trust that you're going to get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would just want to make a comment that I actually had a video interview yesterday, and I interviewed right at the spot that I am. I think it was more light was coming in because I noticed that I'm like in shadow.
Yep.
But there's a picture in the back, and I had a couple of lights on because I didn't want to be too dark. And then just to show you what I wore, it said don't wear prints, but what I did was, I don't know if you can see, I wore this shirt, of course, buttoned up, and I had a blazer. And I had a blazer that matched like the lighter color of the shirt. So it gives you a little pop of color, because I was reading that you should wear a little pop of color, but it wasn't too bright. And then, of course, I had professional pants on because you definitely want to go in like if you're going into work. I was going to use headphones, but when I started, she couldn't hear me. The interviewer couldn't hear me, so I just decided to pull them out and just talk like this, which was better. And I decided to have the interview be conversational, which flowed much better. And when she finished, I also had like I'm right-handed, so I had my phone on my right hand. And what I did was, any questions I had, I wrote on my iPhone, and read, I asked the questions, but reading off, so this way I didn't miss any questions I didn't want to ask her. And she answered, and we had a conversation. It was really well. I think it went well. The only thing is like, I think you, a couple of days ago, you had, we went over interview questions. And of course, one of them was, tell me about yourself, which I cannot stand that question, because I think about, oh, I like cats, I would like to play the saxophone. I like it better, like they say, well, tell me about your work experience, but then that focuses me. Because when they tell me about yourself, I'm like, oh my gosh, where do I begin?
Right.
So I answered the questions as best as I could, and I felt kind of bad, feeling like, well, I should have said more. So what I did was, this morning, I followed up with a thank you note, thanking her for interviewing me about, the job and why I'm being truly passionate about it and everything, and wrote me back this morning and said, well, thank you. I look forward to working with you. So really? I don't know. Yeah. It hasn't given me an offer yet, but said, well, thank you. I look forward to working with you.
Congratulations. That's very good. Yeah. Right on.
I think that's good news.
Congrats.
I'm gonna hire you. She just would have not responded.
Congratulations.
You got a response. That's
I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
Yeah. The one thing I would say, the one thing I would say about just right now, what I'm seeing is there's a light on over your right shoulder, and I would just turn that off, because it's actually causing, it's bright, it shows, and it's actually adding more light to behind you, which is going to darken your face more.
Okay.
So, yeah. So just it probably won't, if it got switched right, it got turned off right now, we probably wouldn't see, we would notice how much it has effect on your face, but it does fill in the background, so it gives you more of a silhouette, which is you don't want, right?
Okay, because I did have it on, because I wasn't too sure if it'd be too dark, and you know, but she was able to, I was able to see the interviewer and she was able to see me. So I was like, okay, that's one thing I want to ask you about the lighting. I was into.
Yeah, it's if the lighting is unless you can actually select where you're and I'd be shocked if they don't have them or if they're not coming out. But you know how when you take a picture, you can pick on your subject matter and it will light that. It's actually telling the camera where you want it to focus for its aperture. I was going to have that, right? So same thing with this, but I would say that your face is a bit too dark right now, and also that what's exacerbating it is the fact that you have glare on your glasses. So not on your right hand, it's fine. It's on your left that's on that.
Yeah,
so you
the windows on this side.
Yeah, on that. But just so it's the aggregate, it's the combination of all the things that is that contributes to this, right? So okay. I think there was another question. Who was that?
Luke, before you move on, is it better to have the light in front of you rather than behind you?
Oh yeah. You don't want light behind you because it's just not gonna it's gonna give you a silhouette. It has to fill your face. You know, and this is just a bit of a side note, and that is when it comes to the film industry, everything's about the light. Everything is about the light. That's why animation has been such a game changer, because you don't have to worry about the light anymore. You can actually adjust your light on that. So light is really the king on that after they can hear you properly. Actually, in this case, I think they'd put them on the same level. Okay. I'm just going to, I know we're past and people stay here. I actually like to tell you about my other webinars coming up. So for those of you that don't know them, so if you just, let me just, this, and then we will go back to questions and make sure I've asked everything. So all the above points we talked about are within your control, and I just suggest you own them. And after you've practiced some more and more and more. And I've seen people, Cindy has put it out there that she'd like to be a interview buddy with someone. I highly recommend. We're all in the same boat. Let's take that. So the big perspective for today's webinar is interviews are stressful enough. Don't shoot yourself in the foot by being ill prepared, because fortune favors the prepared mind. And everything we're talking about is being prepared mentally so that you don't have to do that. Because, you know, you're going into an interview, you're kind of nervous, and then your webcam doesn't work, or they can't hear you and you're flipping with it. And now all of a sudden you're on your heels, because you now have done something that, you know, it's stressed you out and whatnot. And then then for some people would be, for me, is like, what are they thinking of me? I should have had this figured out. And then you're no longer present. The things we talk about, you can take care of them and be proactive. Some other webinars I have, and they're all at 1 o'clock on Mountain Standard Time, is defining your ideal client, your customer, your avatar. And it's really about, you know, are you in business to business, business to consumer? So we look at how to define them and how to sell to them. I do webinars on elevator pitches. So I have part 1, which is the value proposition. It's really about how do you determine and how do you demonstrate what you bring to the table as your value to your potential client. And then I go into navigating the elevator pitch, is really the mechanisms. And I offer a very simple yet, I think, elegant model on how to engage people better. Difficult interview questions is those questions that people hate, like tell me about yourself, you know, that kind of stuff. I spend some time talking about behavioral-based interview theory, behavioral-based questions and behavioral-based theory, and what's that about, so you know how to have that, because people generally misunderstand behavioral-based questions as they have for me. I have one on ageism, navigating the potential minefield, and it's just like, how do you be aware if you're walking into a situation where you might have ageism going on. And this includes the other isms such as sexism and racism. It's still the same thing, as well as ageism. So talk about that. This one, I don't know when I'm putting this on. It's communicational fundamentals. And it's really about what is good communications? Where does it go off the rails? How do we not help ourselves? When do we shoot ourselves in the foot? How do you deal with conflict? The difference between men and women in their communications, that kind of stuff. And of course, Widen Your Gaze Fridays, which is what we're at today. Here is a sample of some of my guest speakers in the past and the actual webinars I've done that they've come and spoken on. And the reason I'm doing today is that my guest speaker on yoga, the merits of yoga, she couldn't make it today. on that, and she'll be coming later, and I'm not sure when she's going to be speaking. We haven't worked that out yet. Yeah, I've done linked webinars on, or I haven't, but I've had guest speakers on LinkedIn. I did this one also. What they don't tell you when they tell you to quit your job to make a 6-figure income, it's about what do you really need to know if you go into the MLM world, or even if you're going to make yourself, put yourself out there as an expert, because the gurus omit quite a bit of information as to you need to know, and it's not in their benefit to tell you because you wouldn't take their programs. Principles and Practices of the Masterful Leader was another talk I had by Vanessa. She did outstanding talk. And then one on video production, and also texting in your favor, and also podcasts. So that's the series that I've done. And these guest speakers might come back in the future, and of course today's. So the other thing I want to tell you about is my elevator pitch diagnostic. It is actually, here's the hard copy of it. And it is 90 minutes with me, where you get to sit and talk with me and ask me any questions from the interviews, my executive coaching background. If you want to talk about how to position yourself as an expert, we could talk about that. It's your time. And I generally charge $197 for that. But because we're in COVID-19, I am now doing it for like 75% off at $49. So if you're interested in having that, please contact me and let me know. My ask at the very end here is that if you know anyone that has platforms that could benefit from my content, for you to make an introduction to me. I've had some people introduce me to other people, Career Confidence and another one on the West End, the West Coast, the East Coast. And so, yeah, if you know of anyone that I could speak on their platform, please an introduction, that'd be great. And connect with you on LinkedIn or give me a review. And I will put that in the chat once I turn off the screen here. So thank you very much. And what other questions do we have? And we are at, oh my God, we're like 75, no, we're well past an hour, 90 minutes. So I'm just gonna put in my LinkedIn information, and let me just find here. So questions.
I'll ask one.
Okay.
Let me try to phrase it. So back in the days when I had to interview folks for some of the positions in my team, I've always done this by phone, not through video conference.
Good.
And in my experience, I think what it helped me is that I was really focusing on the conversation with the potential applicants and what she or he can bring to the table and how she or he can solve the problem or talk about their PhD thesis in that particular case, as opposed to what they look like or whether they're scratching their nose or whether their camera is working.
Right.
And from the little that I know is that something like 70% of the visual content, I'm sorry, the 70% of the first impression comes from the video channel, and something like 20% or 15% from auditory channel, and the rest from the information. You can correct me if I'm wrong. So are the companies essentially like shooting themselves in the foot by not focusing on kind of the right core message that the applicant is delivering, by really trying to zooming in through Zoom on what they look like?
They very well
sound like a philosophical question.
No, it actually brings to a different point on that, and I consider myself in the same category. Is that when I first started interviewing people, I didn't know what I was doing. And I didn't know my biases. I didn't know the things that actually that I brought to the table. And it was fortunately I had some good training with people that helped me, that knew what they were doing on that. So it's and Vicky, I'm just going to ask you about this. Is that, have you seen a lot of hiring leaders who don't know what they're doing in interviews?
All the time. So
Right.
I usually have to educate people in advance. They don't know what's illegal, what they can ask, what they can't ask. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. So part of the thing is that, I think it's no different in some ways, and because I definitely have a bias here that I don't mind admitting, and that is the whole running your resume through an automated system that basically determines if you wrote about the right keywords and whatnot. I don't know if that's a bad negative feedback loop, because whatever you set as your premises, or not your premises, your criteria for that, I think you might have a tendency to actually always find the same kind of people because of garbage in, garbage out. So it really is about companies starting to figure out that hiring is damn expensive. It's crazy expensive when you consider the aggregate, everything that comes into hiring someone. And they're starting to get more and more sophisticated because they know that they take to bring someone on, you're looking at not practically, sometimes very often double a person's salary. So whether they're aware of the fact that they're not helping themselves, I think is a separate issue. It's the world we live in, and we have to adapt to it and whatnot. And it's a different world.
Can I just ask, and this would be for Vicky as well, as in 21st century world, I find that HR folks are less professional than they were perhaps back in the 80s. I find people are taking liberties that they would not have taken in the 80s because there's no one to police them. So Vicky, although I agree with you that you're having to educate these people, I'm finding that people are doing it anyways because there's no one to police them.
Doing what anyway?
Well, asking inappropriate questions.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow. You have no idea. I mean,
no, I don't do that, but yeah.
Yeah, I do. I have actually had to send the RCMP to investigate someone here in Canada. And I had a legitimate concern, and
wow.
And the RCMP did go ahead with the investigation. I will never know the outcome of that investigation. In the 1980s, I would have been privileged to that information. Fast forward to 2020, and they no longer share any of that information with anyone.
Oh.
Well, go ahead, Vicky, if you have a thought on that.
No, I didn't. I think Sahim does.
Yeah, and you know, there's. Go ahead, Shazim, if you want to have a thought on that.
Sachin, just
sorry.
No, it's okay. You don't have to be embarrassed. So, Laura, I think it's not that the professionals are not there or they're not good. Like Vicky and some of the professionals that I work with for numerous firms, there's some really good recruiters or HR people. The problem is there's too many of the crappy ones.
Correct.
They just keep popping up, and it's very easy.
And ruining it for everyone else.
Yes,
it's very easy to start shop in India or China or Vietnam or Nigeria, get a voice over IP system, put 20 people in a room, pay them $1 a day, and ask them to make phone calls. That's what these people do.
Sorry, these people that the ones that I'm referring to have their CHRP. They received awards. They have been touted in industry as being, models in their profession, and
experience is not in congruence for what you're seeing, right? Yeah, which is unfortunate because they do send the bad tone for everyone else in the industry on that. There was this is something else, Laura, and that you had asked about the recorded interviews. Something else I forgot to actually mention on that is when I was doing my research for this and saw that there's recorded interviews and then virtual, like live interviews and then recorded interviews. Apparently there's software out there that basically, I don't know if it's AI, that as they run your resume through the system to see if you're the type of person, now they have AI to read your body language on that. And so, and it's just like, so you submit a recorded response to stuff, and they're actually doing this other things, and it's the world we live in. I don't know what to say. Anyway, I am aware of the time. We are coming up to the top of the hour, which will give us close to 2 hours on this. And unless there's any pressing questions, I should really actually go use the washroom, but other things than that. So any other questions before we go? thank you all for doing this. You stuck with me, so I'm assuming this is a good use of your time, but I really appreciate you spending your Friday afternoon with me, and I look forward to seeing you at other webinars. So you take care now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.